Hello, Miss Antoinette.
Hi, Morgan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay, I got you. I'm about to hang up on my phone here.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, what is this echo?
One of your devices is still on.
Hold on. Hi,
So I just pressed the record button. How are you, Miss Antoinette?
I'm doing fine. Okay, give me 1 minute. We're recording now.
Yes, we are. So I'm going to introduce you to my sisters. I have Mallory Malachi on the call, and also Megan Malachi.
Sure.
And my mom might enter. Not sure. She's
Okay. Sure.
probably trying to get in there. Okay, yeah. So we're all really excited. I have to tell you that Mallory is the reason why I know about you. We saw your Vice episode years back, and then I met Miss Deandria from Twitter, and you guys were together, and I'm like, oh my God, they're amazing, like a super force to me. So it's my pleasure talking to you, and I really thank you for taking this interview.
Thank you, Morgan. And I do apologize for all the times that we have been trying to connect, but we finally got it. All right.
Yeah. And perfect timing.
Yes.
So I usually start these interviews with just getting a little bit of your background, like where you were born. If you want to talk about your parents, where they were born, it's kind of gives a basis of you as a person.
Thank you. Well, I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. My mom and my dad, both, I would consider both of them to be the oral history keepers of my family. And both have shared a great deal of information for me. Although I can honestly say that I am a city girl, but I'm a country girl at heart because I grew up on the land that my great grandmother purchased in Tangipahoa Parish. But it was my mother who really gave me the keys to unlock knowledge of my family history. And I truly believe that family history is where it started at. It is who I am, is everything that I am and everything that I hope to be, And so my mother transitioned in 2020. My father transitioned in 2019. So I lost both of them back to back in physically, but spiritually, they both are here. Because everything I do is because of them, both of them. Yeah.
That's great. And I'm sorry to hear about your parents. We lost our dad in 2008. So
Sorry to hear that.
And I do believe strongly that we should always, like, my genealogy journey has just been, it's taken over my life. Like I went down to Georgia this past summer with my mom,
yeah,
3-year-old cousin. I met everybody in Leary. That's the first time I've ever been in that part of Georgia. I've only been to Atlanta, so I got to see the plantation where my second great grandmother is buried on. So it's just been like a huge life shift. That's the only way I can describe it.
And it consumes you, really, to be honest with you. I always share with my husband, I say, I've been doing this for 32 years, and I think it's time for me to just to kind of like phase out of it. He says, well, then stop fooling yourself. Stop, because I learned there's no such thing. It's almost like belonging to some organization that once you take that oath, you do not get out.
Right.
And that's how it is, with genealogy. It's like, when do you stop learning about yourself? When do you stop researching and documenting and talking about your family history? You don't ever do that. You go to your grave with that, And so I just feel like it just intensifies itself as I move forward, And so with 30 years behind me with research, I'm in a different phase of it now. And this is a very new phase to me. But it's just a part of that journey, guided by the ancestors. And I must say that because let me tell you, most people would think that you're crazy, but let me tell you, they speak to you. They speak to you, they guide you.
Yeah.
If you just only listen. And then I learned, I said, wait a minute, we're talking about DNA here. So I am my ancestors. I am my children. My children are part of me. And we're all the future. So there's no separation. So everything that I need to do it in my physical real time. What is my real time? My real time is to do what some of my ancestors couldn't do. And what was that? That was go into those courthouses, go and collect those oral histories, uh, share it and make sure that the bookshelf looked totally different than what it looked when I first started researching my family history, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, there was nothing on the shelf. I said, wait a minute. No, absolutely not. I got to change this narrative. That's what it was like for me.
So let's talk about this journey a little bit. I know it started with your family research. Can you tell me about your childhood and maybe the political climate at the time? Like, give me a timeline of.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, Morgan, because I spent a lot of time with my maternal grandmother, who used to watch the news faithfully, who talked about the civil rights movement. I was born in 1960. So in 1967, 68, I'm spending all this time with my grandmother. She's making sure I know about some things that she was sharing with me. I was a product of, looking at the color signs, water fountains for the whites, water fountains for the colored, as they would say back in those days. I watched my grandmother go into the store and had to wait till all the white women was waited on, or the white people was waited on, and then she was served. And she would explain to me the best that she knew how to explain it to a child. Let me just say that. But my grandmother made me pay attention. But when I lost that precious rose in 1969, 68, my mother moved to New Orleans in 1972. And the first camp that I attended was a day camp called Tamarine and Fan. And under the direction of Jerome Smith, he taught me what my grandmother wasn't able to teach me about Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Malcolm X. So the foundation was laid by my grandmother. And then come along, I moved to New Orleans, and I was like, okay, all right. So I'm finally getting to make these connections as to what my grandmother was trying to tell me about the civil rights movement. Because I remember, being a part of integration in 1969 in Amet, Louisiana. And during that period, three of my brothers, myself, who was all retained that year. And I remember every day I would go to school. And when I went to school, we would always get whipped every single day by the white teachers, by the white teacher, Miss Deidre. Never forget her name to this day. And I remember it was a fan belt that she would give us these lashes in our hand. And at that time, I realized just how powerless some of the Black communities was in Amet, Louisiana. It left an impression upon me to this day. And 30-something years later, I moved back to the very place where I'm doing the work right now. I'm doing the work. Changing the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the first time you heard about 40 Acres and a Mule or reparations?
Through In Cobra in the 90s, the late 90s. Was the first time I heard it.
Okay.
Prior to that, I didn't hear anyone talk about the 40 Acres and a Mule.
I know, like when we talk about the continued harms, and you do peonage tracing. How do you feel about reparations in correlation to what is going on right now?
What I feel about reparations in that regard is that we are missing out on the real truth about slavery. Yes, on documentation, it said that slavery was abolished in 1863. But in my research, there was cases that came about to 1973. And what do I mean by that? The National Archives, or let's say, located in Washington, D.C., they had cases that was filed with the Department of Justice, the FBI, the NAACP. They was filing cases where people were still held enslaved. So although we know that slavery was abolished in Galveston, Texas, 1865. But when are we going to start ringing that bell? 1965, 1973. May Wall Miller story, 1963. You see, because yes, I can rejoice with and be happy for Galveston, Texas, but I'm also looking at those that was held beyond 1865. So they should be a part, and we should look at the study of reparation inclusive to those that was held in what we call slavery by another name. What is that? Involuntary servitude, peonage. Couldn't get out. Was it any less harmful? Absolutely not. It was just as harmful. Slavery is slavery, no matter what name you call it.
I know with your research, you have also worked on the insurance company cases and the ties to the slave trade. And I know that you used genealogy to work these cases. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Let me just say this, and I say this with all sincereness. Genealogy was labeled as the number one or number two hobby in America, but not for me. You see, because my family was enslaved, and the first thing that many of my ancestors did up on the Emancipation Proclamation was look for family members. 150 plus years later, I am still looking for and connecting with family members today. So genealogy in that regards of wanting to know, who am I? What family do I belong to? Who was sold at the auction block? Where did they go? How many of them? So genealogy is not a hobby. And for those that was enslaved, we have to be very cautious with that terminology and letting people label it as a hobby, because it's not a hobby. You see, when I go back and I research that long lost relative that was sold away, when I researched the day that they were sold on the auction block, or what happened to them, that doesn't feel good. When I think about a hobby, I think about something that make me relax, enjoy myself. But see, I am entering into the door of pain of my ancestors, looking for their daughters, their sons, their sisters, their brothers, their mamas, their father. Absolutely not. It's not a hobby for me and mine. And that's what I stand on today.
So what inspired you the most, or when you talk about just doing this work, what is your main inspiration?
My main inspiration is those that suffered in the most horrible system of slavery in mankind. And for those that's in the present, I always tell people I live in 3 time zones. I live in the past, in the present, and in the future. There's an African proverb that say, not to know is bad, but not to want to know is worse. Okay? My ancestors do not allow me to rest because looking in the courthouses and that, and crawling in the attics and traveling up and down the road, the dangerous roads, just to learn about them and what they had to go through for me to be where I am today is my driving force. See, my driving force is because it is my story, my narrative, and only I can tell it. Only you can tell your story. And if we don't tell it, I will not allow someone to disregard as if we didn't exist. We can't dance it away. We can't shop it away. We can't do anything that will give us pleasures to erase the atrocities and the pain. We got to confront it, whether we want to or not. We got to confront what slavery have done to us. Plantation by plantation, owner by owner, and sometimes there's multiple owners and multiple plantations that they had to adjust to. That's my driving force. They are my driving force. I believe, have you ever heard, and I know you heard this when Beyonce said that there's something that takes over her, Sasha Fierce?
Yes.
Well, the ancestors take over me and I become them. Okay? In real time. I said to them, my body belongs to you because you're going to guide me. You're going to lead me. Show me the way. But they're only going to show those that want to know and those that is in search.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
Okay. So I know when we talked initially, you said you wanted to talk about your testimony for California AB 3121 and the importance of genealogy research to qualify for reparations. So I'll give you the floor.
Well, we all know that during that testimony that you couldn't discriminate based upon race or gender. You had to pick something. So it was lineage based. And so when you think about a case, and I'm going to give you an example of something so small. If a person was in a car accident and it was at somebody else's fault, and if you was damaged, you would have to prove your damage. Now, yes, in that case, it does make sense. But let's bring it back to genealogy. Are you going to have to prove in the courts of America? Yes, you will. Who owned your family? What was the harm that was done? What was the location? They're going to look for all of that. And as I tell people today, when you're doing your genealogy research, think in terms of building your case for reparations. Whether you like it or not, when you go before the courts, they're going to ask those questions. Who owned your family? And there may be multiple owners. What type of plantation? Where was the plantation located at? What kind of work did your family do? It's not all the time that you're going to find those records, because of many of those records do not exist, because there are some that may be preserved in the universities, the state archives, and it may be in special collections, but there are some that will not be able to, you will not be able to find. So the harm was done to my family, and the burden of proof was put at my door, at my step, to say, prove it. And that's what I see. So I tell people that's researching their family history, you can do it for two reasons. One, because you want to know. Two, if you're a part of the reparation case, you will have to prove the harm that was done to you and your family. Do the research, not because of a reparation case, because you do want to know what happened to your family. Because you want to know. Not because of a dollar amount that can be put on it, but just knowledge of whose shoulders you stand on. You know, the pain and suffering that individual had to endure for you. No amount of money can suffice what we endured, what our ancestors endured. Let's keep that in mind. But should we be paid and compensated? Yes. Yes, we should.
That's how I feel too. I have two more questions and I'll give it to Megan and Mallory. Tell me how you feel about Callie House.
I feel that one thing I learned to do is respect people along the way. No matter what those views are, we can certainly learn from any situation. And that's my feelings about that.
Okay, my last question is, can you tell me your favorite soul food plate?
Repeat that again.
Can you tell me your favorite soul food plate?
Mama greens. Mama home cooked greens. Those butter beans. Those are my favorite. Because it was a soul food that out the field, I'm not going to say a garden, because we didn't have a garden. We had a field of mustard greens and turnip greens and all those things.
That's really nice. Well, Megan, Mallory, Miss Antoinette Harrell, you want to keep it for like, and 10, 15 more minutes. I know it's getting late on your side.
Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Harrell.
Excuse me.
Quite welcome.
Sorry, Mama, did you want to go?
Yes, please, because I
Okay.
have to wake up at 4:15. So I appreciate it. Miss Antoinette, thank you so much for this interview tonight. I was floored when I saw your Vice interview. I think I snatched Morgan and was like, "You have to come here and you have to watch this right now." It blew my mind that night. But I guess I kind of have a two-part question. I'd just like to ask you, how do you handle the emotional toll that this work takes on your mental health? And the second part would be like, what brings you joy outside of your work?
Oh, it's the emotional roller coaster. I can't even begin to tell you, it's exhausting. It's, if I would have to answer that in honesty, let me just say this. When I leave this world, it don't owe me anything. You know, because I'm disappointed in what I see with us today. How we disrespect our ancestors. How we dishonor our history. How we don't pay tribute to those that came before us is a dishonor. And where I find my peace is in my garden. When I'm planting, when I meet my ancestors in the garden and they talk to me. And I feel sorry for the future of us. Because we forgot those that came before us. We embrace celebrities as if it's our family, as if they didn't even exist. What a dishonor. What a dishonor. I didn't come up in a time where we didn't embrace the elders and we didn't respect the elders. And we didn't pay tribute to those that was here. We didn't call their name out. But this time here is very frightening because I just want to live my life so that when I leave this place, it don't owe me anything. Everything I have to owe it, I give it now. Because I wouldn't want to be living in a world where everybody all over the world honor their ancestors but us. We're the only ones. And that wasn't us before. You know, I look at the cemeteries, how abandoned they are. The elders, there's no respect for them. And some of them feel like in order to fit in, they have to conform to what the young people are. It's not the way it's supposed to be. So I find my balance in my garden and in art and in my long time talking to my creator. That's how I find balance.
Thank you so much.
And you know, sometimes people often wonder, I can't talk about my work without crying because I cry for us. I cry for our future, for our present, and who we are today. At one time, families were so close. We wasn't individualized like we are today. When I see a family now, when you think about a tree has roots. It has the roots, it has the trunk, it has the branches, it has the twigs. We separate ourselves by the branches, and now we're down to the twigs. And when a twig hit the ground, it's almost going back to dirt. But we don't concentrate on the whole tree. And other people around the world, they honor their ancestors. Because if it wasn't for your ancestors, you wouldn't be here. You owe it to them. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to those yet unborn to make that difference. If that makes sense.
Mallory, you have anything else to say?
No, that was it. I just thank you so much.
Thank you, Mallory.
You can go ahead, Megan.
Hi, Miss Antoinette.
Hi, Megan.
Um, I'm just reflecting on the last point that you made. You said that now the expectation is that the elders or the adults in the community to an extent are expected to, I guess, adhere to how the youth want things to be. I don't know if I have that completely correct, but that's what I got from what you were saying. And I've been a school teacher for 15 years. I teach high school here in Philly. I teach Black Studies specifically, and I actually have the same thought. Um, when I was growing up, we had amazing teachers, and we, to the to an extent, adhered to what they were telling us. We adhered to the traditions. We adhered to the expectations, not just of school, but of Black culture in general. And over the years, I've been finding that slipping away, even for someone my age. And it definitely is super shocking, but also scary to see this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is that when I showed your episode on YouTube to my students about a month and a half ago, that was one of the few things since the pandemic that really caught their attention. So I want you to know that that definitely is an issue, but there are moments where the young people are engaged in our history and our culture, and so we really try to do that. But I guess as a teacher, my question is, if you wanted us to focus on one thing for our students specifically in the classroom, what would you want us to be teaching and what would you want us to say to the youth?
What I would want you to focus on is teaching the importance of Black history, family history. And the reason I'm saying that is because I live down south and we are faced with critical race theory, and maybe you are as well. And if we allow that to happen, that means that everything that the very people we're talking about would just disappear magically. And everything that's within your power, use it to teach. And I think in family history is one of those subjects that would open up history, because I didn't like history in school because I didn't see myself in it. But when you teach family history, your students will learn about local history on a state level, and then history on a national level. But the most important history is their history. Talking to grandmother, talking to grandfather, talking about, and allowing them to talk about the time that they came through, And when they come through that, they will learn about a lot of history as a result of revolve around that. That's what I would say. Because a lot of the students today, they don't even know their grandmother's maiden name, father's, parents' name, where they came from, what was their occupation, what was their contributions, was there any religious organization that they belonged to, or any social organization. Those are very important components, because at one time, a family defined a community, because all you had to do in my time is say what your surname, what that given slave name was, and that would define you in a community. And it was so beautiful. And so we have gotten away from that. And the more we are pulled away from that, the more diluted we become, because we start to grab everything from every other group, and sort of like, dissolve in a thin air as if we don't exist. So teach your students the importance of family and family history. That's what I would say to you.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Is there any other points that you would like to make? Anything you would like to say? This has been really awesome for me. I really appreciate your time.
I just want to thank you. I want to thank all three of you. And I just want to thank you for your hard work. And I just want to say to you all, take social media and let that be your platform to educate and to liberate. Because that's what the young people are. And know that you're making a difference. You may not think that you are, but you are making a difference. And a big difference. And I'm so proud of the young generations like yourself, because you are, there is hope. When I look at you all, I see hope. It gives me strength and it gives me hope. And that's what I love. Thank you.
Well, like I said, Miss Antoinette, thank you, because you're an inspiration. You guys, Miss Deandria, like, I'm so happy that we kind of just like linked. I saw an exchange with her and Nicole Hannah Jones, and I was like, who is she? I need to know her.
I love that sister. That sister, I tell you, she is the modern day Harriet Tubman for me. I've been knowing her for 23 years now. And when I tell you that Sister Deandria, she do it because I don't know, it's some divine power that moves this sister. She reminds me of a queen that's ahead of her time. And that's who she is. She doesn't move with a whole lot of people, but she moves. And sometimes you can move quietly and make big progress with one person more than you can move if you was with 100 people.
For sure. Sure.
Keep moving. The most important thing is to keep moving in the spirit of all those, but most important in the spirit of your own ancestors, who is your own driving force, each one of you, because you wouldn't be taking your time out right now doing this Zoom session if your ancestor wasn't speaking to you.
See, Mal?
Yeah. So I thank you, queens.
Thank you, Miss.
Keep moving. We're in a fight. But when have we not been in a fight? Huh?
Very true.
All right, we keep moving.
All right.
So true.
All right. Thank you all and be blessed.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.